So I've got the Blackwood Telly here. I figured from now on I'll call it Telly rather than Telecaster because that's a name owned by somebody else. And I ruined the neck, as you will have seen previously. Would you? Yes, I think you have. Maybe. But I think I can make it right again, so follow me as I try. Welcome to Monster Guitars, Glenn here. You can hear the weather. It's a very squally, windy, wet day here in the Wellington region. You might have seen this in a recent video where I acknowledged screwing something up. And I had basically decided that I would use this as an ornament because I had wrecked the neck by busting through into the truss rod channel. And the neck is really built into the body, which made it difficult to remove. So in preparing this to be an ornament, I gave it an oil, gave it a coat of boiled linseed oil, but then I just looked at it. I mean, just look at this. How could you not make a guitar from this? It looks really good. So I've decided to take the hard road. I tend to do that. I'm gonna see if I can redeem this. I think I probably can. Because it would be really nice to complete this as a guitar. So I'm going to cut the rest of the neck off, rout out a piece where the neck sits, and glue in a new neck and make a guitar. Let's go. This is all really hard wood. Blackwood is incredibly hard, and we've got some Rimu there, which is quite hard as well. So that's too much work for me to ask my router to do. I'm going to go to the drill press with some Forstner bits and remove most of that material now. Well, it looks like a complete mess, but that's okay. It's just because it's untidy. Now that I've hogged out most of the material with the Forstner bit, I can proceed. So, in order to make the new neck blend in nicely with the top of that guitar where it will be visible, and just because it's a nice wood in general, I'm going to use Tasmanian Blackwood, the same wood that the top is made from. I've got a stash of it. I'll get more because it's one of the nicest woods in the world, I think. But the downside is that it's really hard. Of all the woods that I've worked with, it is the hardest, without a doubt. I've got some Purple Heart here in the workshop that I haven't worked with yet, and that feels like it's going to be a little bit harder. But this is very hard. Harder than maple, harder than the hardest Rimu that I work with, which is pretty hard. So it's hard. So I'm going to have fun cutting this up, but I guess that's what I do now. I'm going to roughly dimension it, get it all nice and square. So now I've got this piece that I cut out from that rather large piece. It's nice and square, but it's much thicker than I need, and I don't want to waste any because what I cut off here, while it will be too thin to make a neck by itself, it can certainly be used as part of a multi-laminate neck. just aware that the wood, especially the parts that I've glued on for some reason, the Blackwood is very hard and the blade was getting a bit warm there. Well, that will be the final shape of the headstock. Well, not the curves as it transitions into the rest of the neck, but that part there. And I just took that rough shape that you saw and smoothed up the edges using my random orbital sander, and smoothed the curve in the end using my spindle sander. And now I'm just waiting for the fretboard to arrive, so I'll press pause and continue when that gets here. While the body waits there patiently, the neck has its fretboard glued on under that rather large, long clamping caul. Well, the clamps are off. Anytime you're doing a glue job, well, okay, anytime I'm doing one of the bigger glue jobs in a guitar build, whether it's gluing up a laminated neck, or especially putting the top onto a body or the fretboard onto a neck, it feels like a birthing process where things could go wrong, but what will emerge as though from a chrysalis is something that looks a little bit more guitar-ish. That looks good. I can't quite tell yet because there's a bit of glue to scrape off, which I'll do when I cut away the excess of the wood. I suppose I should do that next. I haven't built a template for where I'm going to be routing out the place to glue this neck in, because really all I need is two straight edges, and I'll do those one at a time, beginning with this edge here. So now I'm taking my larger router and just using the bearing cutter to go around what I've already established with the smaller router and cut a nice flat bottom into my cavity. Alright, I've got the neck clamped exactly where I want to glue it, and I've got some of these marks already in here, but before I glue it in, I want to remove a piece where this pickup cavity is, and I intentionally made it slightly too long because that's the side you should err on. I need to cut off that end as well. Okay, let's do those things. That is easily cleaned up with a few more cuts and with some filing. I was using a fret cleaning saw, which I really recommend, and which you can get quite cheaply. A lot of small tools like this you can get from China on eBay. This brand is Homeland. They also make the fret rocker that I use, which is also cheap and also really good. Anyway, I was cleaning out the fret slots in preparation for working on the fretboard, for radiusing it, after which I'm going to have to clean the fret slots again, but I just wanted to get anything really bad out of them first. And I spotted something that I'm going to have to fix. You can see there's a small piece of the inlay missing. It's so small that, and I checked this, I'll just prove it to you. I should have had a fret waiting for me to make this demonstration. I'm using one hand and it's tricky, sorry. It's so small that it's going to be pretty much almost entirely, almost completely covered by the crown of the fret, but I don't want there to be any hole there. So I'm going to have to repair that. I don't have any of the inlay material, but that's not important. It's going to be virtually invisible. So I will use some epoxy resin just to fill that gap. And instead of having a piece of silver there, I'll have a piece of something transparent, which is okay. I've got a razor blade in the fret slot acting as a barrier, and it's wrapped in cling wrap. Cling film, what do you call it? We call it Glad Wrap because that's the most common brand of cling film here. Any excess sitting on the surface will just be sanded off, so it's not really a problem to use too much. Alright, just quickly, because I don't want to spend a long time on small things like this. That's where the piece was missing, and now it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. It's full of epoxy, and it's, well, I wouldn't have even known that there was something missing from there previously. Alright, let's radius this fretboard, get some frets in there. I have sanded the fretboard down to 600 grit. Looks and feels great. And before I abandon it for the night, I'm just gonna excuse me, give it a coat of Artist Refined Linseed Oil, which is what I always, making a mess, finish my fretboards with. I wish I could take credit for the inlays, but as I've remarked a few times, the one thing that I don't do yet in Luthiery is inlay fretboards. Isn't that something?